welcome to another bonus edition of Upon Further Review.
Upon further review,
And in this edition, we'll be talking about the Baltimore Ravens at the Indianapolis Colts. This Week 5 matchup will be on October 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can catch that at your local CBS affiliates. So a rivalry game here of some sorts is the Colts used to be in Baltimore before they took off in the dead of night back in the 80s, and they moved to Indianapolis. Baltimore went without football for a long time, but then they got the Ravens as they moved actually from Cleveland. They used to be the Browns before the Browns didn't exist for a little bit, and then they ended up getting back a team there in Cleveland. But here we got the Ravens at 3-1, heading to the Colts, who are at 500 at 2-2. The Ravens, they started off the season with a tough loss in Baltimore to the Bengals. But then, ever since that first loss in Week 1, they have won 3 games in a row. They first bounced back by beating Pittsburgh there in Baltimore. Then they went on the road to Cleveland and won a tight game as they won by 2 points against the Browns. And then Week 4, they came back home and they beat the Panthers pretty decisively. So now here in Week 5, they are going back on the road for their second road game of this season, as they're going to Indianapolis to face the Colts. And the Colts, they lost their Week 1 matchup in Denver to the Broncos, as they were getting beat pretty bad in the first half. They came back in the second and they fell short as they were not able to complete the comeback. And then in Week 2, they hosted the Philadelphia Eagles and they lost the heartbreaker on Monday Night Football on primetime by just a field goal. So they were 0-2 for the first time in Andrew Luck's career, but then they bounced back with 2 straight victories. First, they went to Jacksonville, Florida, and beat the Jaguars with a score of 41-17, and then they hosted the Titans and beat them 41-17. So both of their victories, they scored more than 40 points, only allowing 17 points. And Andrew Luck has put up some amazing numbers. His last 2 weeks, he almost reached 400 yards, as he threw for 393 yards last week, just 7 shy of 400. The week before, he was 30 yards shy of 400 for the second time this year, as he threw for 370 yards. He also did that in Week 1. Week 2 is the only time he didn't throw 300. He actually didn't even throw 200 in that game, as the Eagles had contained him pretty well there, even though they managed to make it a close game regardless. But here we have the Colts host in Baltimore. And this is going to be a very interesting game, definitely one to watch, because this one could have a lot of playoff implications. Is the Colts, if they can win this game and Houston loses, then they'll be tied for first in the AFC South. The Ravens right now, they are looking at the Bengals, who beat them in Week 1 and are undefeated, and they're looking to get in there with them as they trail them just by the 1 game. Of course, the Bengals only played 3 games. They were off last week, so the Ravens are hoping somehow the Patriots can beat the Bengals. And then if that happens on Sunday night and the Ravens win, they'll be tied for first place. They'll actually have the slight edge in percentage, because they'll have 4 victories and 1 win as opposed to 3-1. But if the Bengals win, the Ravens are going to need to win this game just to keep pace with the Bengals as they trail them, especially that costly loss in Baltimore to begin the season. So the Ravens, they need to win this game just to keep pace there in their division in the AFC North. But let's look inside the numbers here. And if we look at the passing offenses of these 2 teams, the Ravens are 12th in the NFL in passing yards per game, and the Colts are number 1. So the Colts have the number 1 passing attack heading into this game. And if we look at defense, they both struggle against the pass. The Ravens are 24th in yards allowed, and the Colts are 21st, and that's through the air. So they struggle to stop the pass, both of these teams. Of course, they're pretty decent at passing. The Colts are excellent. They're number 1. And the Ravens ain't too shabby either at number 12. So expect to see a lot of yards through the air. Of course, the Colts definitely have the clear advantage when it comes to passing the ball. And if we look at the defense, let's look at the running offense and the running defense. And then when it comes to running the ball, the Ravens are 8th in the NFL in running yards per game, whereas the Colts are just 18th. So they struggle to run the ball, even though they're really excellent passing the ball. The Ravens, on the other hand, They're decent at passing, and they're pretty good when it comes to running. Eighth in the league, top 10 running team. And then when it comes to the run defense, the Ravens are seventh against the run, and the Colts are actually 11th. So they both got pretty good run defenses. But when you look at the numbers, you got to give the advantage on the ground to the Ravens. So it's going to be that Colts passing game versus the Ravens running game. And the Ravens, as everyone knows, have been without Ray Rice all year, and he's not coming back anytime soon for sure, not this year anyway. But they've got three running backs who have been carrying the load in Justin Forsett, Bernard Pierce, and I think it's Lorenzo Taliaferro. So they've been doing the job there. So they got those three backs. And they pick up their yards on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And if we look at the points, when it comes to points scored, the Ravens are 8th in the NFL in points scored, and the Colts are number 1. So the Colts put up the most points out of any other team. The Ravens at number 8 in the NFL, not too shabby themselves. When it comes to defense, the Colts are 16th in points allowed, and the Ravens are number 2. So it's quite the matchup. Is the number 1 team in points scored is going against the number 2 team in points allowed. The Ravens are actually tied with the Cardinals for second in points allowed. So it'll be very interesting to see, how that matchup goes with the Colts offense versus that Ravens defense. Of course, the Ravens defense is better at stopping the run. The Colts struggle to run, so it's going to be all on the arm of Andrew Luck for the Colts. That's what they're going to be relying on heavily. And the Ravens, of course, with their running game, that's what they got to do is run the ball. And the Colts are actually pretty good at stopping the run, so they might not do so well on the ground. It's probably going to end up being a game where it ends up being a passing game. And Joe Flacco, he can pass the ball with the best of them. He might not be necessarily known as the best passer. And I remember last year there was a whole big question about, is he elite? And I'll tell you though, Flacco, I've seen him in some games get in some high-scoring shootouts. And that guy, when it comes to those moments in those games, he is very impressive. And I'll tell you, he reminds me of Aaron Rodgers when it comes to those type of games. And just in the way that Joe Flacco is really good at passing the ball downfield on those long passes, those deep routes. Might not necessarily have the best average, in terms of completion percentage, but when it comes to actually picking up yards and throwing those deep bombs, those deep routes, Flacco can do it with the best of them. And the Ravens are a threat to score at any point because of that, even though, they don't have such a high-powered passing attack. At any moment, Flacco can just air one out, and boom, it's a score for the Ravens, whether it be Steve Smith or Torrey Smith or somebody else on their team that ends up catching it. But they could definitely, make this an interesting game, and they got the defense too. That's going to be a key to it too. The Ravens, if they want to win this game, they're going to have to cause some turnovers. The Colts, they're going to have to protect the ball. I'm actually giving this one to the Colts. That's my pick. Although I could see it going either way, I think it's going to be a really tight game. But I think the Colts, after losing those first 2 games, that woke them up. And so they've won 2 since. Of course, this is their biggest challenge so far of the year. With Baltimore coming into town, Colts, they really need to win this game. You cannot be losing at home. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. And I just think at the end of the day, Andrew Luck will find some way to get it done, and the Colts win. But I think it's going to be tight. It's going to be a close game, and I would not be surprised if the Ravens pull it off. It's going to come down to, like I said, it's probably going to end up being a game that has a lot of passing yards, a lot of passing offense. But we shall see. You never know. Of course, the Ravens, their best bet is also if they can get that running game going, open up the play action, that should open up a lot of offense and a lot of options for them. So I can see it going either way, but I give the slight advantage to the Colts. They are at home. And I think, that Andrew Luck is going to pull it off somehow. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, score through the air and even on the ground. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think by leaving a comment below and sharing your opinion. I'm very interested in your opinions and in your thoughts, so express them in the comment section. It is greatly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit the like button. And if you want to hear more of this content, hit the subscribe button. As we bring you recaps for each and every single game in football each and every single week. We also have upon further reviews for each and every single game. That's what you're listening to right now. Is upon further review for the Ravens and the Colts. We do this for each and every single game, each and every single week. We upload those leading up to game time, so keep an eye out for that. We also have our weekly show, The Wedge, where we do quick picks, fantasy fortune picks, a weekly rewind, as well as upon further review for the Thursday night game. So you can check that out. It's usually up on Wednesdays. Sometimes it's early on Tuesday. Sometimes we don't get it up till Thursday morning, but we definitely get it up before the Thursday game. We also have recaps for college football. We cover some top 25 teams, or if there's a big upset, we'll cover that. And we're also covering the baseball playoffs. Keep an eye out for that. So we've covered the wild card so far in the ALDS and the NLDS as it is happening. And we're also going to cover the next round, the championship series of both National and American League and the World Series. So definitely check those out. Thank you very much for listening. We greatly appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying your day and have a great weekend and enjoy all of the excellent sports